Welcome back, Ty and that guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good buddy.
Did you forget who you were for a minute?
Sometimes, dude, it gets complicated. I told you I have a memory like Dory. So if I take too long in the introduction, I'm like, welcome back, and do all the theatrics, then sometimes the name doesn't come to me. But Wes is my name. And my good buddy Ty, sometimes hugger, sometimes snuggler, sometimes lover. I like how that's become a thing. I don't even know where that came from.
I don't know where that came from either. You just started saying it.
But you fucking love it, you dirty dog. I'm going to do an impression of a death, and then you tell me who this death is, okay?
All right.
You ready?
Go. I think that is a perfect impression of Quint being eaten by a shark.
You goddamn right. Is that just me being such a great performance artist?
Well, your acting chops are not in question here.
We're gonna be doing Jaws today, if you didn't already tell. But you know, I actually just watched that part on YouTube, and that is the longest, most graphic fucking, you know, and it kind of I can see like a Saturday Night Live spoof of it just going on and on. It's like the ship in Spaceballs, that
just keeps going past.
It just keeps going, but it makes it horrifying because you see it and you're like, oh my God, everything, and then you kind of like calm down a little bit, and then you're like, Jesus, he's still being, and then when you realize it's a human being being eaten alive, and then blood's coming out of his mouth and shit like that, it's like, it's insane.
Well, and that was the thing he was most scared of. So it's like, whatever your greatest fear is, that's the thing that kills you.
Right. So when he's doing the Indianapolis speech, everybody knows, oh, well, we know how he's going to fucking die. You know, like once you talk about your worst fear on a movie, that's how you're going to die. I agree with Tarantino, and I've said this on the podcast before, the way that he describes Jaws, where it's not the greatest film ever made, but it's the greatest movie ever made. And when I watched that film, and when I watched it last night with Jen, my wife, and it was great to watch it with her because either she never watched it or she did and she doesn't remember. But
really?
Jaws is the type of movie it's so omnipresent for so many years. You don't remember if you've seen it or not seen it. But when I watched it with her, she was enthralled. And
really?
She
normally doesn't like older movies.
Not at all. She doesn't like older movies at all. And that's the great thing about Jaws is like it holds up so well. It's such a rewatchable movie, and it holds up really well. And the thing about Jaws is like it's that naturalistic moment of the 70s of that great, real, gritty, naturalistic acting, performance, shooting. Even Spielberg, like there was a lot of like talking over each other. They would trip on the beach. He kept those takes, and they're walking in the hall and he bumped into the sign. They kept all that stuff. But it was also the introduction of the new way to look at cinema. You know, it was like so it had this like, it was that kind of transition with this great grounded, real acting, but with a monster that's eating people off of the shore. It was just fireworks. I mean, it was, one of the most successful movies ever made. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah. There's a reason why they call it the first summer blockbuster.
What did you think of it when you first saw it? Were you a massive fan? Did you get appreciation later?
So I wasn't, when I first watched it, I probably wasn't very sophisticated. I was mostly watching it hoping to see some boobs.
Right.
But I remember.
And you get to see them in a PG movie.
In a PG movie, you get to see some boobs. But
you see boobs and a child gets eaten in the first 15 minutes, and it's a PG movie.
I do remember thinking that the horror elements worked really well. That feeling of, it was the first time I had really thought about the idea of part of what makes the monster dangerous is that you're in his element. And it's a thing that gets repeated in movies a lot where, if you're out in an open field and you have a rifle and a bear comes running at you from far away where you can see it, it's less scary than if you're like in the woods, you can't see more than 10 feet in any direction and you know there's a bear around, because it's taken it from you're in your element to you're in his element. And he's so much more dangerous in his element. And that feeling of sharks aren't scary if you're walking around on the beach, but the minute you're in the water and you're in his element, he could move 10 times as fast as you can. You know, you're clumsy. He's agile.
He can see everything. You can't see him.
Exactly. He can see you. You can't see him. Everything about him.
That's what's terrifying.
Yes. Everything about a shark is designed to be deadly in the water. And so the minute you're in the water with him, you're just fucked. And I remember that really realizing that idea for the first time I watched Jaws.
What I was thinking about when I was watching the movie and when I went back and read about it, the great white, this was before Shark Week. This was before all the shark craze and all the National Geographic and everything. That's all post Jaws. And Jaws is what got us fascinated with sharks. So Jaws came out at a time when there was still mystery around sharks for most people. They just knew that sharks, they weren't really specific. Then when they hear the word great white, they're like, what the fuck's a great white? You know, and so Jaws kind of kicked all of that off. And when you go back and when you're watching it and you see Roy Scheider going through all the shark books and it's like giving you facts, which is like my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old can tell you all that off the top of their heads now, because sharks have become so much a part of our entertainment and our culture. But back when Jaws came out, it was a big mystery, you know?
When you see the first few attacks, there is that element of mystery. I mean, you know it's a shark. You see the fin come up out of the water, but the size of the thing, the power of the thing, the inescapable nature of the thing are still pretty mysterious in those first few attacks. You know, when you see people get just yanked under the water, like, you know, like they were tied to a weight and it was just dropped, right? Like it's so fast and so sudden. And that the mystery of that is kind of terrifying. You know, what thing is under there that is so powerful that it can just yank a person underwater like they're nothing, right? And then later, of course, you get to see the shark and you realize how enormous it is and all that. But early on, it is played very much as a mystery. Like, what is this powerful thing?
And then there's the famous stories about the shark never working, so they had to do it with music and you know, with seeing how people died on the surface as opposed to looking underneath the surface. And the byproduct of that, you know, Spielberg talks about, that was a godsend because it created this mystery around what the shark was. And our imagination, you know, is so much more terrifying than that shark. When in the opening scene, when she's swimming out and the sun's going down and it's at dusk, you know, I've done this I go out there all the time, and every time I'm out there and I swim far out, we go to the Bahamas all the time. And when I swim way out into the ocean and the sun's going down, I always have that feeling of like, because you can't see what's underneath the water. You have no fucking idea. So even before Jaws, there was always that like psychological thing of like, I can't see what's under here, but even if something was under here, it's way more equipped than I am to make this out.
You know what? I know that you train a lot, but you cannot jujitsu a shark.
You cannot jujitsu a shark. You ain't out swimming a shark.
Nope.
You're not, doing anything like that. So, this movie captures that genetic fear that we all have within us of the unknown and the mystery. It was a lesson that Spielberg taught us with Jaws. I wish people would hold on to that lesson, because I think so many great horror movies, monster movies in particular, suffer by just showing too much of the monster. They're not creating any mystery or, like a famous Jaws in space. That's one of our favorite movies is Alien and Aliens. Yep. And I think the first Alien does such a great job of like...
No, but the thing with Alien is he had the same problem Spielberg had. They built a very elaborate suit for the actor to wear for the alien. So Ridley Scott, when they were filming it, I've read the diary of the making of that movie, and he said it just always looked like a guy in a rubber suit. Every time they shot it, it just looked like a guy in a suit, and it just didn't work. So he did the same exact thing Spielberg did. He cut it down to the minimum amount of showing it on screen that he could get away with and still have the monster present. And I think both Alien and Jaws benefited from the failure of the robot or the suit to work well, forcing the director to find another way to do it. I think both of those movies benefit from that.
Yeah. And then the point of view of the camera under the water, which is genetically what we visualize when we're swimming on top of the water. When all you do is see the camera swimming between the legs, and you hear doo-doo, doo-doo. And it's like Evil Dead when the camera's like flying through the woods, you know, and it's like it's like this entity that you don't know what's happening and where it's going. I wonder if he got that from this movie. But when that thing is like, you know, swimming between legs and everything. It's what we imagine. So it's like taking our already psychological fears, our genetic fears, and putting that into a movie because it struck a chord. Yeah. You know, the beaches for a few years after that suffered attendance. You know, they talk about like when Jaws came out, nobody wanted to go to the beach. Nobody would get in the water. Let's talk about the elements that we think made this such a phenomenon. Number one, like I talked about earlier, is I think that the mystery of the shark, it wasn't as common knowledge. You know, I don't know if Jaws would have the same power because people know sharks so much and they watch Shark Week you know. Yeah. Number two, the best-selling book. It was a massive bestseller. It was a huge, huge hit. And then again, I think the talent and level of filmmaking that Spielberg put into this and the performances that grounded it and made it real and you cared about people in it. And then just the great horror techniques of Spielberg's directing. And then the mystery of the shark, the fact that, you know, if we saw the shark the whole time, it would not have been the same movie. No. You know, it would not have had the same power, same weight. And I think, too, it was the way that they marketed the movie. I think they did it in a very unique way for that time. I guess apparently, like before this, and I'm post this, you know, I was born after this movie, so my understanding of movies has always been the same way. But I guess what they used to do was they would just slowly trickle the movie out. It would start in a few select cities, and then it will slowly grow from there. But with Jaws, they just opened up the fire hydrant. They spent like $700,000 on 3 days of just saturating the networks with advertisement, and it had that great Jaws, you know, that great voiceover with the thing in the water, and they had a great advertising thing. So it just everything came together to be a phenomenon.
Yeah, well, and that is why it is generally considered the first summer blockbuster, right? Because exactly what you're talking about, where in the space of one night, you know, it's Thursday night, Jaws isn't playing anywhere. Now it's Friday night, and Jaws is playing on literally every screen in America. There was no trickle, like you said. There was no slow distribution. It was just one day to the next, suddenly every single screen in America had the same movie on it. And that we're used to that now. That's the way it works now. So, like, that doesn't seem unusual, but at the time, that was really unusual.
It also, you know, it was supposed to come out in December, and it got postponed. It wasn't supposed to be a summer movie. In those days, summer movies were like the B movies, the graveyard of movies.
Yeah, that's where movies went to die, was the summer.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me to think that when would there be another time of the year you would want Jaws to open more than the summer? Right. And so they ended up doing it in the summer, and it owned the summer. It was a time, you know, where movies could do that, where you could go see, like, people would see multiple times one movie over and over and over, and they would go do that. I still do that. But so another element that I left out that I think made this movie such a big success is the story behind the movie. It's like one of the most entertaining making of the movies of any movie ever done. I mean, the Jaws log, the guy that Carl Gottlieb, who was one of the writers on the script, Spielberg hired him as an actor so he could be there in case there was like anything they need. Also, there was a writer strike going on right before the movie that affected it too. Yeah. So he had him come out. He played the mayor's assistant guy. He created a diary. He kept a diary every day. And it's one of the most entertaining books about behind the scenes of making it. I mean, there was some crazy shit going on. And what I think is so entertaining is that it became such a massive success, and Steven Spielberg became, you know, the biggest name in Hollywood for 100 years. But to see how hard it was for him, and how many times he almost failed and almost got fired, and how depressed he got, and how much the crew hated him, and they threatened to pull an elaborate prank at the end. He was so scared of what the crew was going to do to him that he didn't shoot the last shot of the movie. That he had a car waiting on him, and he jumped in the car and flew to L.A. and he didn't because he knew the crew was like ready to commit mutiny. I mean, it was like 6 months over schedule.
I mean, it paid off in the end. Became one of the most successful movies of all time. So I guess
of all time,
the hard work paid off.
Yeah, and the more I read about it, the more I realize like you just need to be friends with or in the orbit of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, because Spielberg was doing the casting, and he offered to Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall wanted to play Quint, so he turned it down. Charlton Heston wanted to do it. Spielberg didn't want him to do it, which was the right choice. Yeah. Jeff Bridges was talked about, which I think would have been a really good choice too. But he was
a very young Jeff Bridges. Who would he have played?
Well, I think young works. I think I think Roy Scheider works as like, an older New Yorker, from Queens or whatever.
So he was going to play the sheriff?
Yeah. The Sheriff Broden. Wow. Yeah. So okay. I think youth could work in that because he's a little bit over his head. He's a little bit, the Roy Scheider, he works because he's from the city. And so he's a little bit like uneasy in the water. He's right. Scared of the water. When 15 minutes in, when the shark eats a child on the beach, Roy Scheider runs to the beach but he stops right before he gets in. He's like, get out. And his wife goes in and gets his son, and he doesn't go in. And he's the hero of the movie.
I mean, I understand him not getting in the water because look, like if I saw a kid being attacked by a dog, I'd probably run over and try to help. I'd probably try to fight the dog off. I'm not going to try to save you from a shark because I got no moves that work on a shark.
But Ty, okay, you're not going to save that kid, but you're going to go in and save your kid, right?
I don't know. How much do I like this kid?
Your kid, your flesh and blood. Because, I've seen him, standing on the shore and screaming for his kid to come in. And then the camera cuts back, and his wife is pulling his kid out of the ocean. I'm like, he didn't even fucking go in to save his kid, which is fucking, which is great.
I like that. Yeah, I agree with you. I like that.
It's such a great detail. Like when him and Dreyfuss are on the boat before Dreyfuss goes scuba diving, he has that big old life preserver, and he's like on the thing, and Dreyfuss is like trying to get him to help him, and he's like, he wouldn't step out. So it's kind of like subverting that whole hero thing that works really well in it. There's a comical thing in it.
Well, I always like when the heroic character is forced to do things that are outside their comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah. And people often forget that. They often forget to do that in storytelling. You have so many movies now where like the guy's wife got killed, but he's a badass commando. So he goes and does badass commando things and then he wins.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he's doing the thing he already knows how to do. Let's force him to do something he doesn't know how to do.
Yeah. And there's no weakness. There's no like Van Damme and Statham, like the whole the biggest challenge they had doing what was the Stallone Untouchables or the
Expendables.
Yeah. They would have it in their contract where they couldn't lose fights in the movie.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, who the fuck's going to win? Because all the cast have those contracts. They can't lose fights in a movie. And I'm like, motherfuckers, watch Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
Harrison
Ford get his ass kicked by the bald guy.
And it's he's one of the great heroes. Like vulnerability. Yep. Don't be scared of vulnerability. It's something that people connect to. And then it pulls them into the world and they're along for the ride. I love the town. I've talked about this in many podcasts, but I love a good small town as a setting. I love a good small town where you get it. It's kind of like the way that Back to the Future does with Hill Valley, where it's like you can start to see the time differences between the same cast and the same group. So you take a complicated idea and you put it within a simple setting. So with this little town, and also, do you know where this was shot in Martha's Vineyard, right?
I don't know where it was shot.
I think it was shot. Yes, it was shot in Martha's Vineyard. But there was something at that time, like I remember going to beach towns like that, when I was young growing up, and there was like a working class vibe to this town. It's like you see this and you see these houses and they're a little bit older, a little bit nice, and it's beautiful. Like, the way that this whole thing is shot is beautiful. But now, if you go to Martha's Vineyard, or if I even go to the beaches that I grew up in, it's all like a sign of wealth. Like it's these massive houses with gates all around them, and you don't really get that scrappy beach town working class feel. And this does that.
Yeah.
And Richard Dreyfuss got cast because Lucas was like, hey, because of American Graffiti. He was like, hey, cast, and he called him by his name, in the thing, and Spielberg cast him. I love me some young Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah, he's great.
He just got a great charisma. He's a phenomenal actor. He's funny. He doesn't look like a lot of people. Like, he's not, like, he's a kind of character, kind of handsome.
He's got a unique look, and he's got a very unique way of speaking, very unique delivery. Like, within 2 seconds of hearing Richard Dreyfuss dialogue, I know it's Richard Dreyfuss. Like, if I'm not watching or whatever, I could just tell immediately. Just got a really unique delivery. And it works well for this part because he's playing this kind of nebbishy scientist guy who's not an action hero, not looking to hunt sharks, right? He's just the guy who, like, understands the sharks or whatever and gets drug into this. We're going to hunt down this gigantic killing machine and you have to come with us. And which leads to some of the scariest moments in the movie are with Dreyfuss in the water. And those underwater moments where he's down in the water are some of the scariest in the movie, I think.
Yeah,
because he's so not an action guy. Like, you don't think he's gonna, like, win a fight with the shark. You think if that shark shows up, he's just fucked.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great thing to take away from this movie of why it's so terrifying and why it works well is there isn't really any heroes.
Quint is an asshole.
Quint is a boozy asshole. He's drunk the whole time in real life and in the movie. And you have Richard Dreyfuss, who's kind of like what you said, kind of the nebbishy, brainy, but they're afraid. They really have fear. And then Roy Scheider, who's terrified of the water, who doesn't even know how to drive a boat, doesn't even know how to be in the water, and they're fighting the greatest predator that's ever existed within the ocean. Even Quint, even Robert Shaw, with that great introduction, where he claws on the chalkboard. That has
been ripped off so many times since then.
Dude, and that's what I was going to ask you is Jaws has been omnipresent in my life. I think I remember the first Jaws I ever saw or being aware of Jaws is like Jaws 3. There was like a 3D Jaws and it was on the
so
regular.
Bad.
Yeah, but you remember it was like an event where you everybody got 3D glasses and you can watch it on your TV. I don't even know how they would do that. But so that was really the only Jaws. But then I watched Jaws much later and like really appreciated so much about it. But when I watched it, it made me think, wait a minute. So like was the mayor with the moral compromise of like wanting and by the way, when I go back and watch it, I'm kind of with the mayor, right? I mean, this is a beach town and they might have had a shark attack, but he didn't know, like, we're all aware of that this is a movie and that there's a great white monster and it's going to kill a lot of people and it's only the first act and there's a lot of killing going on. He is approaching it from like, listen, I have a lot of businesses I got to keep open. This is how we make our money. Yes, there was a shark attack and shit like that happens all the time. It's the fucking ocean. So it needs to, it needs to be, and I get it and I'm with them. But another thing that was interesting to me is you go back and look, this was before things could go viral. Right. So it's, so it's easy to sweep that under the rug. All the people that are traveling there, they didn't know about this fucking shark attack. Yeah. They didn't know.
Exactly.
So you could actually,
it's not on Twitter.
Yeah. It's not on Twitter. So you could like compartmentalize shit. You could like be like, look, just brush it on the good old days where you can like brush shit under the rug and be like, nobody's going to know this. We'll just say it's a boating accident. And then we'll just go through and do that.
And there's no reason to believe it's going to happen again. It feels like a freak occurrence.
Right.
And so from that perspective, they play him as kind of bumbling and foolish for what he's doing, but in reality,
I didn't get that vibe.
They play him as the guy who is foolishly risking people's lives is how he's played. Yeah. But in reality, I agree with you. You get why he's making the decisions he's making. It's like, like if somebody tripped and fell off the dock and died, I'm not going to shut the whole beach down because one person accidentally died of something, right?
Right.
And that from his perspective, that's what happened. An accidental thing happened. One person got killed. It's a tragedy, but it doesn't mean the whole world shuts down.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, this is the best Robert Shaw. I think Quint is one of the great characters, and I think Quint that type of character has been ripped off the most. From this movie.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like you can practically almost every movie that comes out, you can find the Quint character. Oh, he's the Quint.
Yeah, he's the Quint.
Yeah.
And what I love
he's
about
the crusty old guy who actually knows what's going on, but everybody doesn't like him.
And then, but the chemistry between them three, because the first movie is basically the mystery and shutting down the town, and the first half of the movie, and it works really well. And Robert Shaw has that great speech where he's the chalkboard, and he's like, "It's a bad fish," you know, and you know, $3 I'll kill it, but for $10 or for 10,000, what is it, $3,000 I'll kill it, and then 10,000 anyway. But it's got that great like bad fish speech, and then you're like, "Oh God, who's this guy?" And then. And it does such a great job of creating the chaos of being like, of just having a bunch of beer drinkers in the summer being like, we can go make money. And they all are like rushing, and they're just trying not to get people killed. And, you know, Dreyfuss is like, hey, do you know those guys on the boat? And yeah, you go, well, they're going to be dead. And, you know, like they're all just rushing. There's guys like there's this guy walking in the boat with dynamite under his arm. And they're like, is that dynamite? You can't take that on the boat. And they're just like, you know, and they're all drinking and they're all drunk and they all go, like, they're all racing their boats. And the guy's lighting dynamite and throwing it in the water. Like, like just randomly thinks that a dynamite stick's going to fall on the shark's head and blow up the shark. And they're like going and so, you know, it has a lot of humor, and there's like a great moments that contrast all that. You know, then they catch that big shark, and then there's the 4th of July massacre, where everybody and you know, I think my favorite scene within this is before that when the little kid who got killed and the mother, I can't remember her name, what her name was in the movie, but she slaps Robert Shaw, Kittner. When Miss Kittner, who has a great couple scenes in this movie, and it's heartbreaking when, you know, the kid comes up and she's like, let me see your fingers. All right, go back out there. He goes back out there. And that kid just gets eaten by the shark. When she comes up and slashes shit out of Scheider, that scene when he's just really dealing with that guilt and that shame, and his little boy's there. So like somebody that has, you know, 2 little boys, and knowing like when you're going through something and how kids just can just sense, you know, when you need a hug or when you need something. And to me, these are things that separate Spielberg from other directors. There's been, you know, how many other Jaws movies, and they have all the same, you know, equipment that Spielberg had, but he makes the first Jaws, and then everybody makes everything else. And so there's just levels of talent, and you see what a phenomenal talent Spielberg is. But that scene where the kid is just mimicking him, and they don't say anything, and then he says, "How about a kiss?" He gives him a kiss on the cheek. It's just gold. It's just so moving, so sweet, so tender in a movie that there's going to be a lot of dark shit that's just about to happen on the horizon. I do want to talk a little bit about the when Dreyfuss goes down in scuba diving. And by the way, there's all the famous stories of how difficult this thing was and how enormously difficult it was shooting on the ocean, and where Spielberg says, if I went back in time, I would have shot it on a soundstage, which... The reason Jaws is because it's so authentic and it's so real that they're on the ocean. You know they're in the fucking ocean. You know they're dealing with the sunburns and the wind and the things, which made it incredible. I mean, just the horizon alone and the rocking boats and everything moving. I think the next time anybody tried it was Waterworld, and you saw what happened with that movie. I mean, it was like, it's extremely difficult thing to do. But, you know, those are stories that everybody knows and that we've talked about many times before. But the scene, when I was sitting next to Jen, the scene where the guy pops out of the, when Dreyfuss is pulling the teeth out of the boat, and the guy's head pops out of the boat.
The head scene,
yeah. And it was coming up, and I was like, I wonder if this scene still got it. And I was sitting there, and I was looking, and Jen jumped out of her seat. And she's not a jumpy person. She jumped out of her seat, you know, blanket went flying. And I was like, damn, it still got that power. It still works. It made the world jump.
It's still one of the greatest jump scares ever put on film. And it's not a threat. It's not like the shark jumps out. It's just a surprising moment when that head pops out, and it is powerful.
You know, the first half is really kind of like this mystery of what's happening, shutting the town, not shutting the town. But when it really hits the highest gear and it really clicks in is when they all get on the boat and they go out. It's almost like another movie. It's like 2 movies. And it's the journey of going to get the shark. And then you got the great Indianapolis speech in that scene within there where they're bonding and they're drinking together. I mean, if I had to say my favorite scene in this movie, it's that whole sequence of them drinking and laughing and telling the stories and the famous Indianapolis speech. And you heard all the stories around that, right? About you know,
and it's three fantastic actors given great material, allowed to bring their own experience to it, their own, you know, Spielberg let them bring some of their own stuff to it, you know, like the Indianapolis speech, that kind of thing. So it's just this amazing moment of three guys kind of acting, but also just kind of being themselves. And it just has this amazing reality to it, this genuineness to the whole scene that makes it one of the best scenes in the movie. I agree, but also sets up the tragedy of what's to come, because these three guys find this friendship in this moment, and then what's about to happen, and the terror that they're about to go through, and the loss they're about to go through.
And you know, the famous Indianapolis speech, there's the story of Robert Shaw was so hammered that they spent all night shooting it, but not one frame was usable. And he felt so bad that the next day he was like, hey, can I get another shot at it? So they had to reshoot it, and he got it in one take. And then there's the big debate between, you know, Spielberg says that John Milius wrote the speech, right, that Spielberg's like, I need a speech here. And he wrote it, and Milius faxed it over. And then Robert Shaw says that a lot of that was ad-libbed.
Yeah.
In the thing. So maybe it's a little bit of both, but I definitely see John Milius's fingerprints on the speech.
Yeah, for sure. Milius was a great writer. I mean, people know him as a director, but they forget that he was also a really great writer, wrote some really big movies in his time. So it doesn't surprise me that he was part of that. And I know he and Spielberg and Lucas were all, you know, former college buddies who all worked on each other's films and stuff. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And so that whole last act of Jaws is just perfection.
Yeah.
The whole, when he's chumming and you see the shark for the first time, and how they shot it with the camera, and he's chumming, and then he turns back and he looks, and he's kind of like this, and he just, like a zombie, he walks back and he's like, you're gonna need a bigger boat. Yeah. And Robert Shaw, you know, zeroes in on him and just can see in his face. And then to me, so you're gonna need a bigger boat. It's the famous line. That's that's one of the great things. To me, my favorite line within that sequence is when Dreyfuss sees the shark for the first time, and he's like, it's a 20-footer. And Robert Shaw says 25, because you see Robert Shaw scared for the first time. And you see, and so now the guy that we're like, that's the salty dog that knows how to kill the shark. Yep. He's not scared. He's got this shit. But when he sees the shark, and, you know, fucking Kurt Scheider's going to be out of his mind, and Dreyfuss, who's a shark nerd, has like never seen anything like it, and he says 25. And then his wheels are turning, and he kind of like, he goes all business to turn, and now you're like, oh fuck, even fucking old salty dog, you know, he's even scared.
Well, and you keep seeing their plans and equipment fail. Yeah. You know, when they have the barrels that they connect to it, because, you know, the shark can't dive because the barrels are going to pull it up to the top. And then you just see those barrels get yanked underwater one by one. Yeah. And you're like, holy shit, how strong is this thing?
And what a great visual way to tell that story. Yeah. Where you can tell the story of where the shark's moving and what it's doing, and the fact that it can just yank those things down. You're like, Jesus Christ. And then later, to signify the shark's back, it's like, have those things pop up to the surface. It's just so smart.
It is.
It's so well done.
It's incredibly smart, because it's a way, as you said, to show where the thing is, to show its power without having to put the broken shark robot on screen. It's all these clever things that good directors come up with to hide the flaws that they're fighting against. You know, his shark didn't work, so he came up with all these amazing visual cues to tell you why you should be scared, to tell you the power, to tell you where it's at, without showing the model that doesn't work.
I love the scene when he's yelling at Dreyfuss to tie up the barrels, because you get a little window into how apparently he was a tyrant to Richard Dreyfuss and just fucked with him the whole movie, hardcore, so bad that Spielberg had to step in a couple of times, be like, hey, really? Shaw, come on. Yeah. And he was trying to, at one point, trying to make Dreyfuss climb up the mast and jump into the ocean. and he got the whole crew behind him, and he's like, he bet him he's called him a coward, and he said, I'll bet you $1,000 you wouldn't do it, and the money kept going up as he did, and it kept going. It kept roasting him so hard that Spielberg had to come in and be like, hey, come on, like if he hurts himself, we won't have him in the movie. Yep. And Dreyfuss openly talks about it. He's like, dude, he like just ragged my ass. Just drunken Robert Shaw just ragging his ass through the whole movie.
That's not cool, because Richard Dreyfuss is not a large man, and Robert Shaw is a monster of a man. He's gigantic. So you shouldn't be picking on the little guy, Shaw. Leave the little guy alone.
You shouldn't be. Yeah, I'm not a fan of bullying. You shouldn't pick on the little guy. But apparently, maybe Dreyfuss wasn't the nicest guy on set. I don't know. And if that's the case, then all bets are off. If you're a dick.
But Robert Shaw's so big, he could have snapped Dreyfuss like a towel.
But he was drunk. He couldn't get to him. He couldn't. And then there's like, I don't know if you can go on YouTube where Robert Shaw falls out of the boat. They got to pull him in there. It's great. It's so great. And then Robert Shaw's death. Yeah. In the thing, and we talked a little bit in the beginning, but it's like it's so long and gratuitous, and the shark. So I think in 1975 it probably was fine, but I think even there it was probably a little bit too much shark. Like if you go back and watch it, seeing what the shark is, but to really give you an idea of what it would feel like to get eaten alive. That's the scene to watch, where it's like the shark is just working his way up his body and just chomping him down, and you're seeing the whole thing, and just the screams and the torture and the terror, and seeing that is so visceral, so powerful.
And it is, as we talked about earlier, it is a guy literally being eaten by his worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Like whatever your greatest fear is, like, if some people are terrified of spiders. If you're like, okay, you're deathly afraid of spiders, you freak out every time you see a spider. So the way you're going to die is we're going to put you in a box and we're going to fill it with spiders so that they can bite you to death.
Yeah.
Like it's that, right? Because he's terrified of sharks.
Or like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's like, okay, your worst fear is snakes.
We're going to dump you into a giant pile of snakes.
A giant pile of snakes. Yep. And you got to overcome that. So we see your vulnerability, we see your fear. So either it's gonna be the way you're gonna die, or something that you have to get through to the other side to make that work.
Yeah, but it's very well. I'm sure Shaw did eventually get through to the other side of the shark, but you got to go through its digestive tract.
You're right. But they really set up the scene with Scheider climbing on the bow to shoot the shark, the oxygen tank in the shark's mouth, because when Dreyfuss wanted him to go on the bow so we could take a picture of the shark. Yeah. He's like, go on the thing. He goes, what do you mean go on the thing? Go on the thing so I can do it. He goes, what are you talking about? And the argument and the bickering back and forth. And he's like, I'm not fucking going out there. Fuck you. And that whole thing is hilarious. And then, so Robert Shaw ends up having, if he's going to save the day, he's got to go on the bow.
Yeah. And it all of that stuff is very carefully planted ahead of time so that nothing feels like it's comes out of nowhere.
Joseph, you got some questions for us?
Yes, I do. The inquiring tie in that guy minds would like to know, what is the best catchphrase in the movie?
In
Jaws.
Jaws?
Yeah, which, like,
I mean, obviously the most famous one is you're going to need a bigger boat.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Not come over here and shovel this shit.
I also, the other one is like,
come over.
Black eyes, a doll's eyes.
Yeah.
I always loved that. I always loved that line.
The black eyes, the doll's eyes. When he says bad fish in his thing, where he goes, bad fish, there's something really good about that. What were you saying, Joseph? You said there was a few at the end.
What is the final line? Open your mouth, you or smile, you son of a bitch.
Smile, you son of a bitch.
That was another good one. So, okay. Yeah. As far as boats goes, how big a boat would be big enough for you? Like,
to go after Jaws?
A destroyer?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, is the Enterprise still available? The aircraft carrier? Like, I'm going to feel like I'm safe on an aircraft carrier.
Okay, aircraft carrier it is. All right.
But I'd actually feel like you would need, because a carrier, I mean, I guess the jets on the carrier could like fly and start and bomb it. You would need weapons to come through. So, like they have on carriers, they have anti-submarine helicopters. Yeah.
I think the anti-submarine helicopter would be good.
Yeah, then you're good. Okay, yeah. So
should the rating for this movie be updated?
No, I think it is what it is, and that's kind of makes it interesting. It's like a sign of the times that were there. But if the movie came out today, it would definitely be
PG-13 or R.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay. Who made the best meal / had the best death scene? The girl, the boy, or Quint?
Quint.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. Quint.
Now the girl was interesting though, because I think nobody has seen anything like it. You know, you brought it up earlier, Ty, but how it's jerking her from side to side, and then she hangs on to the buoy, and then it just rips her down. That was like, what is that? What's going on?
Yeah, that demonstration of the thing's power and implacability. That was a very shocking moment the first time you see it.
Okay. Brody getting slapped. Did he deserve it?
I think he thought he deserved it.
He would. I think he would say he deserved it. It's a mother in.
Yes, I would say he did deserve it, because somebody died that day because of a shark attack, and this was the next day, and the boat, the ships, everything was open, and he allowed that to happen. I mean, I think you need to take a moment to kind of figure out what's going on, and it's a kid's life. I mean, that's brutal.
Well, it's a grieving mother.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, you understand the extent of that grief. Yeah.
But again, I understand the mayor's point of view. I understand. Like, I don't think you should. Anyway, go ahead.
All righty. So the guy in the boat coming up to the boys towards the end of the movie, kind of weird, sus. Did he give you like a weird creeper vibe? Remember, he comes up to the boys. He's like, "Hey, boys. You having a problem there?"
I don't remember getting a creeper vibe from that. Maybe I should rewatch it and see if there is a creeper vibe there. I don't remember there being a creeper vibe. But
alrighty. So personally, do nails scratching on chalkboards bother you?
No, not me.
Yeah, it doesn't. It does not make my scalp crawl the way it does for some people.
Alrighty, Wes. Knowing how rambunctious you were in your childhood, did you ever use explosives while fishing? Having to think.
No.
Oh, okay, no.
No, but I'm glad I didn't know that was a possibility. Seeing the guy throw dynamite in the water. What was that movie where they were throwing like cherry bombs in the water, and then fish would floating on? What was it? Was it Splash?
Was it Splash?
There was a movie.
I have a memory of that scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a scene in Crocodile Dundee where he's fishing with dynamite.
That might be it. Yeah, they're fishing, and then it comes up, and if I would have known that, that'd have been like two of my favorite things.
Who had the biggest set of brass balls, Quint or Hooper?
Quint.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
100%.
But you kept pointing out how like Hooper is the one getting in the water with nothing. He's, okay. All right.
No, but Hooper was doing that before he saw the shark.
Okay, true.
Before he saw the shark. And also Quint, like most of his friends were eaten by tiger sharks. Yeah. And the fact that he's still a fisherman and he's still making a living by catching these sharks, that guy's got some balls on him.
Point taken.
Yeah, that's the guy who, like, all of his friends got murdered by monsters, and so he became a monster hunter.
He's got to overcome that trauma and fear every time he gets on the boat.
All right, talking of trauma and fear, would either of you go swimming with a shark?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know that sharks almost never attack humans. It's very rare. And there's plenty of sharks that do not see humans as food, that if you swim with them, you're pretty safe.
So that's a tricky question because we know too much now. We know that sharks they're not going to,
Back when Jaws came out? Fuck no.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, back when Jaws came out, when we knew nothing about sharks and we saw Jaws, fuck no.
Yeah, no.
Dude, I would get scared of Jaws in swimming pools.
Now,
I'd be in swimming pools.
I assume neither of you have actually swam with a shark, though.
No. I never have.
Yes, I have. You have. I do a lot of spearfishing.
So you and Jen both have swam with a shark.
Jen has too. Yeah, but I do a lot of spearfishing, and I haven't seen like anything. Like I've seen barracudas, I've seen nurse sharks, I've seen a lot of harmless sharks. If I saw like a mako or tiger shark, I'm getting out. And I've seen some pretty I've seen bull sharks, and I'm like I'm done. Like any aggressive shark,
out.
Like a bull shark will fuck you up.
Alrighty. What is the peak cinematography moment in the film?
Sheriff Brody zoom in when the little kid gets eaten.
I mean, that's
iconic.
That's the famous one. That is, that, like Wes said, that's an iconic scene. Some of the ways Spielberg shot the guys on the boat to show the empty space around them, how far out they were, and sort of the smallness of the boat, the loneliness of it. Some of those are some of my favorite shots in the whole movie.
So would Valentine and Earl be able to kill the shark? Tremors?
No, I know who you're talking about. I mean, they did have some bombs. Like a bomb might be able to kill the shark if you can get it.
This is a great question. And so, I mean, look, the thing is, in the rules of Tremors, they're going to win. But Jaws has a little bit shadier on the rules, right?
Yeah.
So, like one of them might die in Jaws. In Tremors, they're not going to die. So I think it's very likely that somebody's going to die. And I'm not sure. It'd probably be Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon will probably die. And then the other,
I would agree with that.
But like, that's an interesting question. Like, so Martin and Riggs, if they were killing, like, that shark's a dead motherfucker. There's
John
no second act.
John McClane versus Jaws.
Oh, John McClane, you don't get through the prologue. Like when John McClane, when the girl's getting jerked around, you just see a guy on the beach in a tank top just dive in, and he's faster than the shark. And then he catches the shark, and the shark's running away. In John McClane's Jaws, John McClane is the Jaws, and this is told from the shark's point of view, and of him trying to get away from John McClane in the ocean.
Okay, is it a perfect movie, or would you have cut anything?
There's no fat in that movie.
It's pretty close to perfect.
Yeah,
I mean, there are things that modern filmmaking tools would allow you to do slightly improved versions of, just because we have better technology now. But with the technology that was available at the time, Spielberg made a perfect movie.
Yeah,
agreed.
You know, you could argue like that Richard Dreyfuss little scuba diving scene when he was pulling the teeth out of the boat. You could argue like that was they added that extra because Spielberg wanted that another jump. He got greedy for another jump scare, so they added that out. But it's the greatest jump scare of cinema history. It's the greatest
jump scare of all time.
So you can take that out. So no, there's nothing. No, it's like, would you do anything to the Mona Lisa?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, does the statue of David still need legs? Yeah, he needs legs. He's the fucking statue of David.
Alrighty, last question. Who was the real villain of the movie? The shark or the mayor?
The shark.
The shark was
the mayor's just a dumbass bureaucrat who doesn't understand what's going on.
The shark's just doing what a shark does.
So you asking like who
is the evil?
Who's evil? Personally, like the antagonist force of the movie is the shark.
Yeah,
but without the decision of the mayor, does the shark get to feed?
What, you think the shark? First of all, here's the thing: that shark's going to eat somebody somewhere.
Yes, it will.
Yeah,
right. And
he
then
just might move further down the coast.
Exactly.
He might just move further. But second, again, I've talked about. I agree with the mayor. I agree with what he's saying. Now, we've all seen. Cold-blooded.
Yeah, but I agree with what Wes is saying, because the problem is you watch a movie, you know all the things that happened, and then you get mad at the characters for not like having like precognitive powers ahead of time and avoiding all those things. Audiences do that all the time, but it's bullshit. Like, if you're that character in that moment, in that situation, you're probably going to make the same choices that person made, given the information that they had. And just because you saw the end of the movie doesn't mean you can retroactively go back and go, well, clearly they made the wrong choice.
But the mayor didn't even see the first girl. Like, the audience got to see the girl in the ocean get killed, get eaten, and saw her get jerked around, and it's terrifying. The mayor didn't see that.
He didn't know any of that.
Yeah, he just knew that there was like this shark attack, and that's just going to have. It happens to be the ocean, and the shark must happen to be there. Yep. But he is thinking about the welfare of the people in his town. He says, listen, we have 3 months to make our living for the whole year.
Yeah.
So if you shut us down for 4th of July and we start, like when he says about them doing the autopsy, he goes, if you cut that shark open and that Kittner kid comes rolling out of there, like, we're not going to have any of that shit. And I'm like, yeah, Yeah, you're gonna have the kid roll out on the dock when you got people that are going. No, you can't do that. When you got photographers around.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool. So, do we want to do the top 5?
Yeah, let's do top 5.
All righty, let me share my screen.
Is it top 5 times a kid got eaten by a shark?
Well, naturally.
Do you have footage? That would be so horrible.
Alrighty. Top Jaws inspired movies.
By the way, that's really funny. We're going to need a bigger building. That's really funny.
That is funny. Aliens obviously is number 1.
I would say, I don't think Alien. I think it's, I think it's Alien, not Alien.
I don't think he meant to put the S.
Correct.
Yeah. Alien.
And I agree with Tremors. Tremors is an awesome Jaws. Deep Blue Sea. I as much as I love Deep Blue Sea, and I do love Deep Blue Sea. I mean, it's pretty. So it's so directly just being Jaws that.
I've never seen Deep Blue Sea.
It's got our boy Tommy Jane.
Tommy Jane's in it. He's good.
Oh, is that like that with that great shark at the end the
one that eats Samuel L. Jackson?
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
I think The Reef is actually a really good movie. I like that director too.
Oh, The Reef.
That was good. Yeah.
He's an interesting director. I like his stuff.
So I know this is not going to be on either of your lists. And this is almost just an honorable mention. I ride on Orca. I really
isn't that the one where
Bo Derek?
It's Bo Derek gets her leg bit off.
Yep.
Yeah, it's but first of all, you got Richard Harris.
Yeah.
For me, Richard Harris is in my top 5 greatest actors of all time, and he's good in everything he's done, included Orca. But for me, Orca is the most realistic of the Jaws situations because killer whales are highly intelligent and they're twisted, demented animals, and they torture seals, and
for
they
the
don't
fun
even
of it.
Yeah, for the fun of it. They don't eat it. They'll see a shark in the sea, and they'll flip that. They know how to kill sharks. They'll flip it over and suffocate it, and then just leave it floating. And I've seen them circle whales, like big, massive blue whales, and take out. So the big whale with the big humpback whale with the, what do they call them? Pups. The baby humpback whale. And they separate the pup from the mom, and they kill it, and they don't fucking eat it. And then they swim off and don't kill the mom. So so the fact that, to me, Orca is the most realistic of the Jaws movies. I don't know if you guys are on board, but I would, Orca would be up there.
If you scroll down, he's got that Korean film, The Host, on there. I think The Host is amazing. Ever watched The Host, Wes? It's a Korean horror film about a monster living in the sort of, I guess it's like the sewers and water system of this beach town. It's great. You should watch it. Definitely watch the one that's subtitled. Do not watch the one with the dubbed, because the dubbing is terrible. But watch the subtitled one. It's really good. I would put The Host up there for sure.
I don't see anything that beats Orca.
Yeah, I mean, Anaconda is it was a fun little gimmick, but it doesn't hold up very well.
No. What's Crawl? I never saw Crawl.
Gator film where a girl gets trapped in the crawl space, and there's like a massive storm system where she's trying to get out.
I kind of hated the Meg, so
it's a total popcorn trash film. Ever see The Gray?
I have. Yeah, with
Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson,
yeah.
Okay, so we have Die Hard, Alien, Tremors, The Reef, The Host, and Orca.
But if you haven't seen The Reef and The Host, I don't know if we should put them on there if you haven't seen either of those movies.
Is The Reef Blake Lively?
Is it?
Isn't it?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, it might be Blake Lively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really good film. It was like unexpected, like how good it was.
Yeah.
I would definitely put that up there.
Cool. I think we got our 5.
Yeah, I think those are the 5 I would pick.
You're gonna need a bigger building. Oh, that Alien. Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for hanging out. This was a great time. you know, this is such a blessing when we get together and talk about these movies and fun. And thank you for your support. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you soon. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.